I have a life heuristic that nearly every situation can be described by a Dr. Seuss quote. And product leadership is no different. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. This is about caring about the people around you and actioning their growth. Product leaders make their team become greater than the sum of their parts. And product leaders do not necessarily have people reporting to them. The impact and the skill set of a leader is the same regardless. Nearly every product manager podcast interview starts with, "So, how did you get into product management?" And that's because the response is usually a very interesting, "Well, I took this non-linear path, and then one day I looked in the mirror and we realized I'm a product manager." And my experience was the same. After I was asked to be a product manager, I said yes, because it sounded really cool, and then I had to look up what it was. Even though most of us have fallen into product management, it's not by chance. We're all natural leaders, and we organically carve a path towards the seat that drives the change. Like magnets, we find our way to the room that steers the ship. That being said, newer product managers are forging a more deliberate path towards the role. Companies are hiring product managers earlier as they scale and more of them. It's a more known and celebrated role. And it's now the #1 choice of MBA graduates in the US. That being said, there has been a decrease in job satisfaction with the role, per Pendo's State of Product Leadership report between 2018 and 19. And there was an increase in people looking to move out of the role. This could be paired with the fact that 80% of product managers think that their leadership is lacking in a core area, per my findings. So how do we ensure that our fellow product managers are getting what they need from the role, and we don't inadvertently make financial consulting more attractive again? How do we lead people who are already self-starters and entrepreneurial? The answer is creating an environment in which product managers can lead themselves. No helicopter parenting. But this is not about carte blanche autonomy, sitting back and waiting for the success to roll in. That is just setting everyone up for a harder path, especially if you have associate product managers and newer product managers around you. This is about creating an environment in which PMs can grow their own success, where you are a trusted advisor for the work that they are progressing, and you are also an active participant in their career growth. So I'm going to dive into those 3 core areas, starting with building a strong product culture backbone. Performance issues, more often than not, come down to a cultural issue, not a technical one. And I really like this quote by Laura Hogan, because product culture is what sets the stage for expected behaviors and attitudes as your team thinks and builds product. To exist, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of thought. It is not formed by those things we wrote in that wiki that one time. If you do nothing else, set a vision. Every product culture has its own ingredients, but the basics remain the same. And the vision is the most fundamental part of it, because everything else stems from that. And that's why 76% of product managers said that this is what they want most from their leadership. After that, set themes and KPIs for how you're going to go after your vision over a period of time. You should have principles for agreed ways of thinking and doing as a team. You should have build a shared library of proven methods that have taken your team from greenfield research right through to production code. This turns the scrappy into the reusable and also fosters shared learning. And then you should have role expectations. This is how people know what's expected of them, and it holds leadership accountable to coaching to those skill sets. Then you add in your secret sauce. This is everything that makes your culture your culture. Done? No. All of that falls apart if you don't have a healthy dose of psychological safety in your team. And this is the belief that you will not be punished if you make a mistake. And you will not be punished if you speak your mind. Without that, people make decisions that won't get them fired. They become defensive, which is often in conflict with innovation and growth. Well said by Glenn Holmes, the senior product manager at Workday, who's actually speaking later today. So, most companies are forming a product culture. They're doing a little bit of a lot, or they're doing really well at some of them. Your job as a leader is to find out where the gaps are and do what it takes to fill them. Hold up a mirror to yourselves and take a how might we approach. Then bite off chunks and iterate. But keep in mind that anyone can go off and build these shiny new things. It takes a leader to get everyone's fingerprints all over it. That creates buy-in and also ensures it can take on a life of its own. But to truly build a culture in which your team can do their best work, you need to manage up and around you with non-product teams. A rule 101 in life is don't be a black box, as people will fill in the void. But yet, a lot of product teams are called a black box. I have been called a black box before. So building a product culture as your backbone and documenting it creates a transparent way for your own teams to know how to go after their missions, but also creates transparency for non-product teams. So let's go a little bit more into involving teams around you outside of product. Because on paper, everyone across the company is going to think that improving your practices is a great idea. But if you don't involve them with the change, you're going to hit more roadblocks than jump over them. And this quote captures that well, by the authors of Fly to the Buffalo. Change is hard because people overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they may give up by giving that up. So think about the people who care a lot about the work your team is doing. Walk in their shoes, and then think about the anxieties they may have about the change you're making. The sales leadership team may have anxiety when they hear the product team want to involve customers in discovery. What if customers start talking about what's not going well? That might derail future contract negotiations. Talk to them about the value of customers knowing that you really want to understand them and the benefit of that feedback loop when customers see their experiences are fueling the progress of the products that they're using. The engineering leadership team may have anxiety when no one's feeding the team, when you're involving engineers in experimentation. Talk to leadership about the cost of feature bloat. People being on pager duty 24 hours and being pinged at Sunday morning because your code base is too big and customers not using half of it. Plus, the underutilization of engineering skill sets if you're only using them in execution. And then the anxiety that your executive team, more frustration, might have when their "can you do this next" idea is not taken at face value, because now you're using research and metrics to validate ideas first. Before you get to that point, seek out the people who influence your executive team, and then work out a plan that ties back the change you're looking to make, back to value, back to your company, mitigation of their investment risk, and also increase of customer satisfaction. Whatever the change you're trying to make, think about who might react to it, how they might react to it, and then involve them in the change. At the end of the day, everyone just wants increased success. So link your change to the success that they want to see. Use their language. Because if you think, but this is a product management best practice, is going to get people to hop on board, they won't. You might as well just shout into a black hole. So those are just a few examples of how a considered approach is going to power the change. A call out here for emerging leaders is look up and out. You may think you have a strong culture within your own pod, your own team, your own tribe, whatever you call it, but that's expected. A leader learns how to influence people outside of their immediate sphere. You should use Ash Moira's expectation violation. When people realize that the methods they're currently using are not working anymore to get the job done. Action that urgent moment. Call out for people leaders here is a healthy culture is your backbone upon which you will mentor your team. But it's absolutely critical that you are not a single point of failure for it. Everyone's fingerprints should be all over it, and you should manage yourself out of the team's day-to-day. It does take a lot of upfront investment, but it pays really strong dividends well into the future. So the next core area of being a product leader is becoming a trusted advisor. And this quote by Maria Shi really anchors this concept well. I measure my own success as a leader by how well the people who work for me succeed. And that's because product managers don't want anyone to swoop in and save the day. They want to save their own day using the advice from people that they trust. Most of what a PM needs from their leader is mentorship. And yet, this is what PMs say they are missing the most. So let's start with the advisor part of being a trusted advisor. Being an advisor and not a boss is actually the harder path to take in tech's very get-shit-done environment. The pressure to continuously deliver value is strong. So it can be alluring to think about shortcutting into boss mode to move things along, but that just shortchanges everybody. Your team feel devalued, and their confidence will be eroded. And a demotivated PM team is like kryptonite to a company, because at the end of the day, they are usually the ralliers of others. It also stunts the growth of your team, because they're not learning for themselves. They're being micromanaged. Decisions are not theirs. And it shortchanges your customers, because the progress they're seeing in the products that they're using is limited to just one person. And that one person's point of view is probably pretty myopic because they're not on the ground. So the only thing you're growing by shortcutting into boss mode is your own gray hair. The first step into advisory role is building that strong product culture backbone. That is what you will use to mentor. Then ask more questions and you give answers. Be accessible. Give guidance, not instructions. And practice situational leadership. Because unless you've hired Dolly the sheep clones on your team, which is unlikely, you're going to have a diverse set of experience, attitudes, tenures, backgrounds, and that diversity is your strength. So you need to practice situational leadership, which is changing how you coach depending on the situation and the personal. You have to make it personal for it to be impactful. Let's talk more about now the trusted part of being a trusted advisor. And this is the psychological safety piece. People need to know that questioning and testing is prudent and that failure is learning. And we talk a lot about this, all the time, in fact, as a PM community, as a product community. But yet, in a lot of companies, the PMs are still saddled with the responsibility to have all the answers. They're called blockers instead of risk-mitigating superheroes. They're held to timelines instead of value. And their informed pivots are called mistakes. And if not corrected, this knee-jerks a team into perfect is the enemy of good behavior, which is where they're striving for perfection and never get to good enough. Or even worse, they stop questioning at all, and they become idea implementers of really loud stakeholders and influential customers. So, Every rational person knows that perfection is not going to happen off the bat. But this still seeps into software development. That's why I really like this quote by Neil Patel, that perfection in its elusive glory is like a unicorn. Sure, it sounds great, but who's actually seen one? I would rather ride a real horse than wait for an imagined unicorn. So it's your job as a leader to enshrine this way of thinking, that progressive progress is the best way to work across the company. Your team needs to trust that you are advocating on their behalf as they take risks. You're helping them extract learning from failures. You're coaching on next steps. And your team knows that if they're always right the first time, that they're not taking enough risk. Call out here for emerging leaders is your growth is not the only thing you should be thinking about. Other people's growth is what you should be thinking about as well. Learn loudly and seek opportunities to coach others. Call-outs for people managers, or for people managers, is that if you do nothing else every day, mentor. Your growth is your team's growth. Your impact is your team's impact. And nothing will accelerate that more than mentorship. It's too easy to get caught up in the busyness of the day. The third core area of being a product leader is being an active participant in someone's career growth. And I think Heather Hart, a PM in HubSpot, says this well for all of us when she says, I want a product leader that is willing to challenge me, to constantly push myself outside of my comfort zone, because they know what I'm capable of, even if I don't. This is specifically relevant for people managers, because your team is your product. And at the heart of every product's health is progression. And product managers want progress. They are go-getters. And whether you like it or not, do not see themselves on your team for the rest of their lives. Part of their job satisfaction is growing their skill sets to be able to confidently move off your team to another role. And what's more motivating than a conversation about career growth? And yet, only 33% of companies say that their leadership team are good at these conversations. Managers are not great at making the time to have these conversations. They get caught up in the busyness of the day. Or managers are afraid to talk about career progression in case their team starts thinking about career progression. But if you care about retention and motivation, which you should, given the fight to the death for talent out there, you need to ask each team member where do they want to be in a couple of years, and then help create a path to get there. If you don't invest in their professional development, they will find somewhere else that will. And when you're having those conversations, be prepared for them to say another team, another company. That's okay. Because again, you are not their everlasting world, but you should play an instrumental part of it. You will also have times where a PM says, I actually want to move out of product management. Or you have someone on your team whose skill set is not a good fit for PMing long term. In both examples, you need to know enough about that person to be able to suggest other roles that would chomp at the bit for their skill sets. So we've spoken about the three core areas of product leadership. Now let's talk a little bit more about the path to get there. And as amazing product leaders don't magically fall from the sky, I really love this quote by Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. Product leaders learn on the job. They seek out gaps and struggles that the team is having, and they learn how to overcome them. They hone their skill sets over time to drive progressive change, not divisive change. And over time, during their career, their circles of influence will increase, and therefore so will the size of the change they can go after, bringing their team with them. And if you were to do 5 things to help you get there, these are them. The first is start. Leaders do not need the word leader in their title. The next is it's not all about you. This is about growing others. Your superpower as a leader is being able to maximize the value of those around you so they can grow too. The next is create a legacy. The measurement of a good leader is how their team can thrive long after they've left. What are you creating today that can be maintained sustainably after you've left? The next is rally. Because product management can be a hard slog. So be an anchor for your team. Celebrate the wins and say thank you when they take risks. And lastly, don't be the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. It's too easy to get caught up in the business of the day. A leader starts their day thinking about team health and ends their day thinking about team health. And we're all becoming better leaders. We're never there. And that's why when Yamini Rangan, HubSpot's new chief customer officer, said 2 weeks ago, leadership is like a mountain without a top. You're never at the top planting a flag saying, I've made it. It really rang true. And I think Dr. Seuss can take us home with this quote about that mountain. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. Thank you.